I don't know what came over me in October, but I just completed the best reading month of my entire life. I guess the power of spooky season compelled me, and I was unstoppable when it came to reading. I did not stop the whole month. It's basically all that I did outside of work, and I read some fantastic books. I've got a lot to talk about, so I'm not going to ramble here. So let's just get right into the stats and the books. So in October, I read a grand total of 25 books. I DNF'd 3, and that gave me a total of 7,157 pages with 76.5 hours of audiobook listening. This is the first time in my entire life where I've reached over 7,000 pages in 1 month. And a good chunk of that was in the last couple days of the month because I saw how close I was and I was determined to get myself over that threshold, and I made it happen. Because prior to this month, my best reading month of my whole life was in April of this year where I read 6,950 pages, and I didn't realize that I was 50 pages shy of 7,000 until the month was over, and I was pissed. So this month, when I saw that I was close to it, I made it happen. Anyways, let's get into the books. I'll start as always with my DNFs. First up was Witches Steeped in Gold by Ciannon Smart. This was the very last book that I attempted to read for Backlist Bash, which is a series that I've been doing for the whole year where I read the oldest books on my Goodreads TBR, trying to clear out the ones that have been there for like 6 years. This was the last book for that series, and sadly it was a DNF. I think this is definitely a book that would be great for other people, but for me it just was not my personal taste. It throws you right into the plot with no context, and I like to have a really good sense of world building. I like a good, 30 pages at least of info dumping world building at me in order to feel grounded into a story, and this one didn't do that at all, so I didn't feel connected to the characters and just generally had no idea what was going on. I also DNF'd Under the Fang, which is an anthology edited by Robert R. McCammon. I found this at a thrift store for $2.50, and I like vampires, so I figured I would give it a shot, and I didn't enjoy this. I didn't get very far. I only read the first 2 stories, but this one isn't your classic vampires where they've been around for centuries. The vampires in these stories were all biochemically engineered in the last couple of years at the start of the book, and that is really not interesting to me, so this one was not going to be the book for me, sadly. And the final DNF was The Dark Between the Trees. This one I'm really sad about because it sounds a lot like The Ritual by Adam Neville. I have not read that book, but that movie is literally my favorite horror movie in the entire world, and just for some reason I haven't gotten around to the book yet. But this one had a very similar setup, and I was hyped about it, and it was not great. I got a decent chunk of the way through this book. I think I listened to the audiobook for about an hour and a half, give or take, so it was about 25%. And yeah, it was just really not interesting. I didn't like the characters. The atmosphere was not well done, unfortunately. So sadly, this was not what I hoped it would be. Moving on to the books that I did finish, I am going to kind of rapid fire these because I don't want to be here for an hour and a half trying to film everything with a solid review. And some of these books I just don't have much to say about, so I'll move on from them fairly quickly. But anyways, books that I did finish. I recently stopped giving star readings to nonfiction and poetry because I don't feel well equipped to properly review these ones, but I enjoy reading them. So my unrated books for this month include Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green, which was phenomenal. I'll read pretty much anything that this author writes because his voice is just so wonderful to listen to. The audiobook was also narrated by John Green, which I really enjoyed. So it just felt like having a conversation with him, which was lovely. I also read Your Favorite Scary Movie by Ashley Cullins, which is a nonfiction about the Scream franchise, and I had a blast with this. I also did a full Scream movie marathon the week after finishing this one, so it was great to have read that book and get all the context for kind of how things were shot and certain scenes and the ideas and where they came from, and then immediately go and watch the movies. It was great. Really enjoyed this one, and I do recommend if you're a fan of the Scream franchise specifically, but also just a horror fan in general, because it does go into how this franchise changed the entire horror genre. And lastly, for the unrated books, I listened to the audiobook for How to Be a Good Savage and Other Poems, which was just absolutely stunning. The audiobook was so incredible for this one because all of these poems are read in all 3 languages, which was absolutely incredible to hear. So highly recommend this one if you're a fan of poetry. Even if you're not, give it a listen. It was phenomenal. Lucky for me, I did not have any 1-star, 1.5, or 2-star reads this month. Sadly though, I did have a couple of 2.5 stars. So we'll start with All Hallows by Christopher Golden. This author wrote one of my favorite horror books that I read, oh god, at least 10 years ago. I think I was in university, so a very long time ago, and it's one that I still think about. I can never think of the title, but I'll put a picture here so you can take a look at it. That book was so good, and I can still feel the terror of reading that book. I just double checked. I read it in 2018, so not quite a decade ago, but still a very long time ago for me to viscerally remember how I felt reading this book. So I was really excited to read this book because it is a Halloween read. It's set on Halloween night in a small town in the 1980s and follows various families as they're being hunted by this weird demon thing with flames for eyes. Sounds creepy as hell, and unfortunately this was just not very good. The vast majority of this book was centered on the personal drama of all these families. There are affairs happening and divorce and all these things going on that I just didn't care about at all. And the creepy part of things really didn't start until more than halfway through the book, and by that point I no longer cared. So 2.5 stars for this one, as well as 2.5 stars for The Low Low Woods by Carmen Machado. This one I DNF'd in September, but I just kept thinking about it, so I picked it back up and I restarted and finished this book while on shift at work on a slow day. So but yeah, this was fine. I could have left it at a DNF and been happy about that, but whatever. I read it and it got me over the 7,000 pages, so I'll take it. My 3-star reads included The Woods All Black by Lee Mandelo. This one I read for a project vlog that I'm working on where I retry books that I DNF'd. So I'll save my thoughts on it for that video whenever that comes out. The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi sadly was a 3-star for me. 3 stars is not a bad rating, it's just that I have very little feelings towards it. With this book, my enjoyment level was more like a 2, but the writing style was so pretty that I bumped it up to a 3 because the writing in this is undoubtedly gorgeous. It's very lyrical, very poetic, it is beautiful, but the plot was so boring. This took me forever to get through. It's a fairly short book, and I think it took me like almost a week to read this book. It was not for me, unfortunately. Something about this one did not work for me as well as I wanted it to, but at least it was pretty writing. I also gave 3 stars to Must Love Moss and Moonshine by Maisy Magill. This is, I believe, an indie published book that I got for free. I got it from like a one-day only free cozy fantasy romance day that some indie authors were doing, so I snagged that one and it was fine. I was liking it at first. The first half was definitely stronger and the second half kind of went downhill. It just kind of got repetitive and boring. Plus the romance in here was a little bit cringy at times, especially in the beginning. In this one, the main character has amnesia and she's being nursed back to health by the Dryad guardian of the forest, and they're complete strangers, right? But he keeps thinking about like wanting to smell her hair and how perfect her face is, and just like, you're doing too much, stop it. So not my favorite book, but it was a good enough time. Moving on to the 3.5 stars. The first one is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson, and while 3.5 stars is still a great rating, this book let me down so hard. A Dowry of Blood is one of my favorite books of all time. I would say it's probably my favorite vampire book. I reread that one almost every year. I absolutely adore it. I heard the reviews for this one. I did hear people were let down by it, but I still had high hopes that I would love it. And while I didn't dislike it, it was so not what I hoped it would be, because like with A Dowry of Blood, S.T. Gibson really put her whole heart and soul into that book. The plot was intense, the character work was fantastic, the atmosphere was palpable, everything about it was so good. And with this one, it really felt like she was holding back. It just seemed like every single element of this book needed just like a 10% more push and it would have been fantastic. But it felt very safe, you know, like nothing was dark enough, things weren't intense enough, there was nothing that really stood out about it. It was an interesting book. I liked the plot, I liked the characters, I liked the atmosphere, but I didn't love any of those elements, and I was very sad about that. I gave 3.5 stars to Crota by Owl Goingback. This one is an indigenous horror set in, I think in the 90s, or was it written in the 90s? Whatever, something like that. It was good, I liked it, it just wasn't one that's gonna stick with me for a long time. The Ghost of Rose Hill I read for a book club last month. I forget which one, but one of them. I think it was Cozy Quill. Either way, and this was good. I liked the message mostly. I really liked what the main character had to say about history. This one is a YA about a young Jewish girl who is spending the summer in Prague, and while discovering the history of her people, she becomes friends with a ghost. And there's also something after her soul, I'm pretty sure it was. I kind of forget now, to be honest. I liked pretty much everything about it, aside from the fact that the main character was very dramatic. She seemed very over the top and theatrical, and I think that was just the style that the author chose to go with, which isn't a bad thing. It just wasn't for me personally, and this really didn't need to be a romance either. Had the main character and the ghost just been friends, that would have really helped with the pacing, but with it being a romance, everything felt super rushed and it just didn't feel believable. Rolling in the Deep by Mira. This is the prequel novella to Into the Drowning Deep, and I had a really good time with this one. Into the Drowning Deep was definitely better just because it was longer. This one definitely could have been a full-length novel, and I think that would have helped to strengthen it quite a bit, but as is, it was still a great read. Still really enjoyed it. I just wish that it was longer and there was more to it. Everybody Wants to Rule the World Except Me by Django Wexler. This is the sequel to How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying. This was just as stupid and ridiculous and fun as the first book, and I really enjoyed it. I liked the first book better because the plot was more interesting. The plot in book 2 kind of lost me a little bit, but I still really enjoyed the ride. The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I enjoyed this one for the most part, but it just was not at all the book that I thought it was going to be. I believe it's marketed as a horror, and I really wouldn't call it that. This is just kind of a historical science fiction. There's really not any horror elements to it, for me at least. The atmosphere was pretty good. I liked the setting of it. I liked the characters, but same thing as the S.D. Gibson book. There was nothing about it that I really loved, and I love this author, so I was really hoping... I'm holding up the wrong book. This book, The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. Yeah, I love this author, and I know that I can really love her books, so I was sad that this one is not one of the ones that I absolutely loved, but I'm happy to have read another book by this author because I do want to read all of her books one day, so at least there's that. The last of the 3.5 stars was Model Home by Rivers Solomon. I'm obsessed with this cover. I think it's so pretty. I love this aggressively violent green. It's so good. But this one was kind of interesting, where I think it is a fantastic book. It's just not the book for me. This one used a plot device that I am personally really not a fan of. I can't say what it is because it would spoil the entire book, but I just strongly dislike when books do what this book did. This just really wasn't the story that I was thinking that I was gonna get, and the plot device that was used made this much less interesting for me and just not the kind of book that I would typically read. I still enjoyed it for the writing style. I liked the characters a lot. I loved the very complicated family dynamic in here. I thought that was so well done. It's just the actual meat of the plot was not for me. Moving on to the 4-star reads, starting with The Entanglement of Rival Wizards by Sara Raasch. This one was the book club read for the in-person book club that I'm part of, and I really liked this book. I didn't love it, and I almost DNF'd it quite a few times actually in the very beginning, because at first the main character drove me up the wall. I am typically not a fan of the like prankster type characters. I just think they're kind of annoying, but I stuck with it, and the main character did eventually grow on me quite a bit, and I ended up really enjoying him, and this became an absolutely adorable, lovely romance that had quite a dark undertone as well. So yeah, the second half of the book I absolutely adored, but that first half was a bit rocky for me. The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst. Oh, this cover is so good. I think it is absolutely gorgeous. I love this art style. I loved this so much. It was so good and so my kind of romance, mainly because of the dynamic between the main character and the love interest. She is a very loud, extroverted, very talkative person. Meanwhile, he is this shy, soft, kind of grumpy introvert who does not like to talk at all. So it's just her like prattling on about nothing, and he's just happy to listen. That brings me so much joy, and I loved this book for that. I thought it was so great. And then you also have on top of that this beautiful enchanted greenhouse full of singing enchanted plants who are just such a riot of cast of characters. They were so much fun, and I loved everything about this book. I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 just because of some pacing issues a little bit here and there, and overall I did like the Spell Shop better, but this one was pretty close to that one in terms of enjoyment. Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar. I read this one for an episode of Page to Screen where I read the book and then watched the movie. I have a full review of both the book and the movie in that video, so I'll link that above and in the comments if you want to check that out. A Mouthful of Dust by Niveau. This is the newest book in the Singing Hills cycle. This was delightful. It was the perfect amount of creepy. I really enjoyed it. I love listening to these books over audio because these stories just feel like they're meant to be listened to. They kind of always feel like you're sitting around like a campfire telling scary stories to each other, and I love that about these ones. And while this one was not my favorite in the series, I still really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to continue on with the series every year as they come out. Buddy, Tony just woke up, so pardon the interruption. Tony says hello. I gave 4 stars to The Steel Prince by P.E. Schwab, which is the first book in the graphic novel series set in the Shades of Magic world, and this series follows the king when he is much younger and still the prince. Really enjoyed this one. The art style was absolutely beautiful. I did find the plot a little bit hard to follow, but aside from that, it was a great time, and I can't wait to carry on with the series. Hungerstone by Kat Dunn was a beautifully gothic Carmilla retelling. Sapphic vampires, you know I love it. I loved how gruesome it was. I loved the character development in here. I loved the quiet female rage. It was just so perfectly everything that I wanted out of a Carmilla retelling. Unlike certain other Carmilla retellings that I read this month, looking at UST Gibson, this was exactly what I wanted it to be. And again, some pacing issues just made it a 4-star instead of a 5, but overall, enjoyment-wise, this was phenomenal. I also gave 4 stars to Haunted Ever After by Jen DeLuca, which is a contemporary romance where a woman moves to this town in Florida where it is super haunted. Everyone's got a ghost, and the ghost loves to meddle in their love lives, and it was hilarious and fun, and overall a great time. I don't have much to say about it, but I did really enjoy this one, and I'll definitely carry on in the series. The last of the 4 stars was It Came From the Trees by Ali Russell. This one is a middle grade horror that I really enjoyed. I don't often love middle grade, but I still try it out once in a while because I always want to like it. I had like pretty much given up on middle grade for the most part, but I still had this one on my TBR, so I decided to give it a shot, and I'm very glad that I did. It really took me by surprise. It was the perfect amounts of creepy and atmospheric. I actually really enjoyed the characters. I love the setting of it. Everything about it was so well done, and honestly, it was pretty creepy, and this is exactly why I still sometimes try middle grade, because sometimes I get surprised. And finally, I had 2 4.5 stars. The first one was Best Hex Ever by Nadia El Fassi. This one is a contemporary witchy romance, and I ate this book up. Oh my god, it was so good. This one follows our main character who was cursed by her ex-girlfriend, where anyone who falls in love with her is going to get really hurt. She's been living with this curse for years, and she knows that her mother could get the curse off of her, but her family's from Morocco, and she's just not sure if her family would be okay with her being bisexual, so she chooses to live with this curse so that she does not have to come out to her family. But then her best friend is getting married, and she is the maid of honor, and all of her friends and her family are all meddling in her love life, trying to get her to hook up with the best man. It was so cute and so sweet, and I loved the family dynamics in here. It was heartwarming and just such a lovely read. I also love the tropes in this one. I love forced proximity. I love like meddling families and friends. I think it's so funny and charming, and this one did a fantastic job with it. But mainly it was the family dynamics and friendships in here that just made this book so fantastic, and I highly recommend this one. And the final read for this month was Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. Finally read it, guys. It finally happened after months of putting it off, and I had a blast with this book. It was so fast-paced, so well done. This book felt like watching John Wick, especially that one scene, I think it's the very end of, is it John Wick 2? The end of that movie where like the text message goes out and he's like sprinting. This book felt exactly like that scene, and that was just so much fun. This was dark and gritty and violent and just so good, and I can't wait for the last book in this series. I can't believe that I put this off for months. Like, why? Absolutely phenomenal time and a great way to end off the month as well. And that's it. Those are all of the 25 books and 3 DNFs that I got through in October. I had such a phenomenal reading month. I can't believe how many books I read. I am definitely in need of a little bit of a break. I'm filming this video in the first week of November, and there has not been much reading going on in the last week. I needed to chill for a couple days. But before we wrap up, let's do some quick superlatives, starting with the best book, which was, of course, Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. No questions about it. I adored this so much. The worst book, I would say, is All Hallows by Christopher Golden. This could have been so good, but sadly it just was not. Biggest surprise? Definitely It Came From the Trees. Again, I'm typically not a huge fan of middle grade, so if one can make me enjoy it as much as this one did, then that is a huge win for me. Biggest disappointment is An Education in Malice, just because I know how good this author can be, and I'm so sad that this book did not live up to their potential. And being a Carmilla retelling like Sapphic Vampires is so up my alley, and this was just such a letdown, unfortunately. Most memorable, I would say, is Clown in a Cornfield, because this is also not usually my genre, and all those twists and turns were so good and just had me so tense. It was fantastic. Most forgettable, I would say, is Must Love Moss and Moonshine. This felt like a pretty generic, cozy fantasy romance and isn't one that'll stick with me for a long time. The best audiobook is A Mouthful of Dust by Nevo. Again, these stories just feel like they're meant to be listened to. Even though it was kind of a scary book, it still feels very comforting to listen to for some reason, and I love it for that. And finally, the prettiest cover definitely has to go to The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst. It's just so gorgeous. I love it so much. And that'll do it for the October wrap up. Let me know what your best or worst book of last month was. I would love to hear your thoughts. Or if you've read any of the same books that I did, also let me know. But in the meantime, thanks so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world, and I'll catch you in the next video.